I was not living according to myself of what I was naturally. And to me, I wanted to be a girl. I wanted my hair long. I wanted to wear the dresses. So it was a constant reminder. And they basically talk about how transgender children or children with gender dysphoria struggle with a functional type of depression because again, they have this conflict. And the conflict was the very first thing that I realized as a 4-year old. I still remember that. It's palpable even today at 60 years old. You use the term lifestyle. It's talking about like the party people that hang out in the clubs. And I guess I'd have to say that that was me, but I didn't know anywhere else to meet gay people. You know, we didn't have the internet and we didn't have these opportunities to meet healthy individuals that weren't just hanging out in bars. And in the 5 significant relationships that I had, I was so sexually addicted. I was never faithful in any of those relationships. I represented myself as if I was, you know, fun Mike and on the outside or whatever, but deviant on the inside because I was having sexual relations with as many as 3 different men in a day, and I would do that as often as 4 times a week for 20 years. That's a long time. And you know what? Every time I started a significant relationship, I always did an AIDS test and figured that it would come back positive. And you know, each time it came back negative. And I just had one. I just had one. Oh, back in September, and
Yeah.
praise God, I've never been infected with HIV. That's the hand of God. That's
Right.
the hand of God without a
Right.
doubt.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of John Chen Out to the World. I'm very privileged to have Michael Carducci here with us today. Michael is a friend. He is a speaker, someone who travels all the time, different parts of the globe, and speaks to various churches, organizations, and is in close affiliation with those in the LGBT community. So his story is something that you'll definitely want to get an earful of because he's had a very colorful past, many experiences living in the LGBT community, but also being a Christian. Now, as someone who leads a ministry called Coming Out Ministries, he is a lead speaker, a senior speaker, and I would love to be able to share your story. Michael, nice to have you join us.
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks, John.
Yeah. Hey, I want this to be a very casual, friendly conversation because we've already
Cool.
gotten to know each other really well, I feel like, in our initial meeting. And people are going to be really, really blessed by this conversation because they're going to learn so much about what you do in your profession. And as a speaker, you travel a lot, right? Right now, you're over in Switzerland. Is that correct? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So that's not technically
crazy.
your home then, over there.
No.
Oh,
Actually, I'm
okay.
homeless, John. I sold my house
Oh,
2 years ago, so I've been on the road constantly. And fortunately, I have family and friends in the United States that I still hang with when I'm there. But I've been in
wow.
Europe now for 6 months, ever since October, and I've been traveling. Mhm.
Is that mostly because of COVID, or is it because you have a lot of meetings and appointments there?
I think it's in spite of COVID and everything basically shut down in the United States as of March of 2020. And I didn't have any speaking engagements. So I got a motorhome. I started traveling through the Eastern United States and seeing people. Yeah, that was really super cool for
Wow.
somebody who doesn't like to drive, right? I hate to
Right.
drive, but yet there I was, driving
Yeah.
this motorhome.
Right.
And so then in October, I was supposed to speak in Germany and I was sure they were going to cancel. And every month they would call and they would say, well, we're not really sure. We might have to cancel. I'm thinking, well, everybody else did. Why haven't you? And
Right.
then 2 weeks before the event, which only gave me a small window because you have to have 10 days of quarantine,
Okay.
they opened up the borders of Germany for specific guests. I wrote a letter, my pastor wrote a letter, and the event wrote a letter, and they said, well, if he comes for 90 days, we can approve it. And so I said, I'll stay for 90 days. I've got nothing else going on. And so I got into Germany. I had 2 speaking engagements, and I was done by the middle of October. But after the first speaking engagement, I started getting more invitations to come to rural areas in Austria, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Holland, and now Switzerland. And I spent an afternoon in Paris, and yeah, so it's been amazing. I've been to 8 countries 12 times with 4 COVID tests. Tomorrow we'll make 5 COVID tests, and with only 2 days of quarantine in 6 months. Is that amazing?
Yeah, and
I
you
think
didn't
I'm
even
gonna
plan
make
that. You didn't even plan that.
no, no, no. So, John, how casual is this? How casual is this?
You can go fairly casual, and we
Can I,
definitely have
can
like some priorities on items, but
I run rogue for just a minute?
go for it. Go for it.
Okay, here it comes. Here it comes. So, it's 20 years now. As of November 11, 2020, it was 20 years that I've been walking with God,
Yeah.
and 20 years that I've been with Jesus Christ. And I don't know, it probably sounds really self-centered, and I guess it is. But my 20-year anniversary was coming, and I said to God, I wonder what you're going to do for me for my anniversary. Like, there's
That's cute.
always something that
Yeah.
we celebrate, because a baptism is like a birthday, a wedding day, and a funeral, right? So it will just pass the funeral part. But
Right.
for a wedding anniversary or birthday present, I was asking God, what's it going to be? So this is really strange, but when I was 7 years old, I fell and I knocked my 2 front teeth out, and they were my permanent teeth, and they were just dangling. And my mother just shoved them up in my mouth, and they rerouted. But they
Oh,
rerouted crooked. They crossed over. One was back, one was forward. And so I looked like a beaver for most of my life. At 40 years old, I had a root canal on one of them, and they turned yellow. So being a public speaker, and then I had these big canine teeth, so I looked like a werewolf or Dracula or whatever. And then this one tooth had a big shadow. So I've never really liked my smile. And so I was looking for a dentist that I thought I could find somebody to fix my teeth, but I didn't want to look weird, like I had, chiclets stuck in my mouth or something. But
right.
I had spoken in Stuttgart, Germany, and somebody in Austria emailed me and said, "Hey, we'd like for you to come to our area and present." And I said, "Sure, no problem." We worked out the dates or whatever. But I noticed at the end of his email, it said cosmetic dentist. Lights went on, and I just said, "Hey, would you mind just checking out my teeth while I'm, there at your place?" And he goes, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just come on." I get
Right.
there, and this guy is not just a cosmetic dentist. He has an institute where he works with his daughters, and they are both dentists. And get this, they are not just cosmetic dentists. They are some of the best dentists in the world.
What?
Best cosmetic dentists in the world. I know. I'm
No.
shocked. And so I went to him, and I was there for 3 weeks, and their office was across the street from the house. So he'd say, show up at 10 o'clock, show up at 3 o'clock, whatever. They would take
Right.
x-rays, they did forms on my teeth. And this is my
Oh,
20-year anniversary present from
look at
Jesus.
those babies. Wow. Like
Can
little
you believe
pearls.
that?
Yeah, I'm blinded. Ooh, they're
Mhm.
beautiful. That's
And they come with
incredible.
batteries, so I can dim them down or up. It just depends
Gotcha.
on what I'm
Right,
doing.
right. In case you blind all the ladies with those
Right.
incredible canines. That's
So
incredible.
anyway, it was a
Yeah.
small diversion, but I didn't even ask God. I didn't even ask him. And I got my teeth done in Austria by one of the best cosmetic dentists in the world. I am still in shock. I'm still in shock
Right.
about how good it
Right.
is. I don't have a house, but I've got a God who owns 1,000 cattle. Wait, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just amazing what he does.
Wow.
Amazing.
That's
Yeah, thanks
quite
for
the
letting me
story.
share.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for allowing us to hear that. That's incredible.
Yeah,
Man, and
yeah.
I'm just thinking like for my birthday, my parents just take me out to Courtyard, which is like this fancy Italian restaurant in our hometown. Now you get the best service in the world for your teeth. Wow, what an anniversary gift that is. That's incredible.
What a God we serve. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. He is good. He is good. Man. Well, let me know and let the audience know what exactly it is that you do traveling all the time, speaking. What do you speak
Sure.
about? Why are all these people helping you out? Like these random strangers who run these
Right,
events.
right. These random strangers. So, 20 years ago, I walked out of the LGBT life and walked into a relationship with Jesus Christ, and I had a ton of confusion. I didn't know. I was baptized with a boyfriend and a sexual addiction. And I knew that there was no way that I could ever be straight and that gay was who I was. And I wasn't interested in giving up my boyfriend, but I was beginning this very difficult journey with Jesus Christ. And the two questions that I had for Jesus was, I want to know why I was transgender at 4 years old.
Mm.
And I wasn't gay at 4, but I knew that I wasn't a boy either. And then at puberty, at 13 years old, I wanted to know why my natural thoughts became same-sex attracted. So those were the two main questions that I had for Jesus. But I was beginning this journey with him, with my boyfriend, thinking that, that if my boyfriend accepted Jesus, that we would be this mighty team for God. But in that very slow process and that slow journey, I have a little friend. Look at this.
Aw, what's their name?
This is Maxley. What's your name again? Anyway, he's a big nudge. He'll actually sit with you at the dinner table between you and your plate. And he doesn't pick your food, he just sits there and while you eat. Right. So he's a lot of fun. I call him the big cat.
Most of the cats I know, they just kind of like sit in the corner and glare at me. So I'm more of a dog person. Yeah. Yeah.
Me too. But this cat's pretty special.
Oh,
yeah. So so with those two questions in mind, as I was beginning this journey, I didn't even think it was possible to give up my relationship. And the Lord started to show me amazing love, really amazing love. And as he was showering over me this amazing love, there were other things that were coming into play that I was really questioning. And as I read the Bible and I read that same-sex practice was forbidden, and I was like, what? And I go, what are you talking about? And I said to God, why would you ask me to give up something that was so good? And I was dating a millionaire boyfriend that had big blue eyes and big arms. I was a very successful hairdresser in Orlando, Florida. I was doing television people. I had a condo on a lake with a boat. I had a house with a pool. Right. My boyfriend and I both had convertible Mercedes. We had everything that the world says is valuable. And
you're on top of the world.
And here I walked into this relationship with Jesus, and it started addressing all of these things. So anyway, I gave Jesus an ultimatum. I said, if you want me out of that relationship, you're going to have to do it yourself. And Jesus said, I'll get right on that. And 3 weeks later, my boyfriend broke up with me. But that was the beginning of a very difficult time.
Why did he break up with you? Do you know the reason why?
He said, yeah, he did. He said this later, actually, several months after we broke up. He said that the changes that I was making in my life were so profound and they were really interrupting our relationship. And he said that by breaking up with me, he was hoping that I would come to my senses and drop the whole religion thing and come back to him. He said he still loved me. He still cared for me. But it's interesting because God was working that out, because when my boyfriend broke up with me, I knew that came from God, and that set me on a new journey. But it wasn't a pretty one, John, because I remember when I went home alone and thinking, will I be alone for the rest of my life? Will I never know what it's like to love again? I was crying bitter tears. It was not an easy transition for me. But as I cried, it was Jesus that was holding me and Jesus that was filling this emptiness in me. And I can't tell you, I can't even put my finger on exactly what it is, but that was 20 years ago. And he's still like it took about 7 years for me to stop acting out sexually with men. And I can't put my finger on it exactly even after 20 years, but I still am amazed that Jesus, who I can't touch and I can't feel and I can't see him, how that is more valuable to me than being in a sexual relationship with a man that I couldn't even go a week without. And I wasn't even faithful to my 5 boyfriends that I had over a period of 20 years. And now it's been 20 years. So I've been out of the gay life as long as I was in it. And I'm still not married. I'm not in a relationship with a woman. And yet God is still profoundly more satisfying than anything that I ever experienced, with all that money, all those condos, all those cars or whatever. And I have a 17-year-old car. I sold my house 2 years ago. I'm homeless. I get to travel the world and get to talk to people. And there are challenges. This ministry is tough. I started Coming Out Ministries with 4 other individuals 10 years ago. This is our 10-year anniversary.
Mm.
And all of us came out of LGBT lives. And we were international within a year, going around the world talking about biblical sexuality and purity. And as we were telling our stories, we started to realize that this is much broader than the LGBT issue, that we're really talking about everything, including pornography addiction, adultery, premarital sex, and of course, same sex, that kind of stuff. But it's much broader than just the LGBT issue. And I think that that's basically what has catapulted this ministry over the last 10 years.
I see. That's incredible. Thanks for explaining all of that, because I think the viewers definitely have.
So
yeah, what else do you have?
Yeah, let me throw this in.
Yeah.
So 2 Peter 2:9 says, coming out of darkness into God's marvelous light. And that's what Coming Out Ministries is about. But really, to enhance it just a little bit more, I want to go to Revelation chapter 18 and verse 4, and where it says, "Come out of her, my people." So we're all coming out, John. Even if you never struggle with same-sex attraction or transgenderism, we're all coming out of something. And Jesus says to come out of her, my people. And so it's interesting, on Coming Out Day, I think that we should celebrate coming out of our issues, our addictions, whatever that is. It's not an LGBT thing. It's a sin thing. And God says for all of us to come out. So, for all of my straight friends, I'd like to give them a shirt saying I'm coming out and have Revelation 18:4 on it. Wouldn't that be good?
Yeah. Yeah. We just devote a day where we just come out about all of our issues, whatever it may be, that is in opposition to what God wants, the ideals and values of God. I think that's a very, very provocative idea. I mean, especially as Christians, I think there is this culture a lot of the times that you see in various denominations of faith where people are believing that they have to be perfect, that they have to be, not only does God call us to be perfect, because ideals instruct us to be better, right? It convicts us to be better in whatever way. But we do feel a sense of pressure and anxiety sometimes because we can't be real. So what does it mean to be real, but also to achieve and be excellent? And we all want to be excellent, but then at the same time, we have so many shortcomings. And the Christian narrative is that we have sin. And so that's blocking that transcendence, that relationship, right, that we have with God. Since the very beginning, man was supposed to be with God. So for those who aren't Christian, that are tuning in, they find this very, very strange to hear. And I think most people understand, okay, Christians, they're about sin, they're about becoming like Jesus and trying to make their way to God at some level, even if it's, Jesus paying the cost on the cross and all of that. How did you come to find yourself at that point, as a gay man living in the gay community? And I want to say, sometimes people get offended too in the gay community when they say gay lifestyle. What's that? Is that so nefarious, to have a lifestyle that I'm in love with this other person of the same sex? So not naming it a lifestyle is helpful for those who may be Christian, conservative, to keep in mind.
Right.
And how did you get to that point, though? What was it like growing up, struggling with these same-sex attractions, but also feeling a little bit gender dysphoric? So you say trans. I just want to communicate to the audience that you really mean that you felt like I should be a girl, I should be a woman. How did that taper off, and how did you change your views about yourself from a gender standpoint, from a sexuality standpoint, and a spiritual standpoint?
Ooh, that's a lot. Well, let me break it down. Start kind of at the beginning. At 4 years old, I knew that, literally, a 4-year-old child, I knew that I was in the wrong sex. I knew that I was a girl trapped in a boy's body. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind.
How did you know? Can you explain that? How did you know?
I just knew. It was one of my first conscious thoughts because you know how I knew? Because every time I gravitated towards the things that were natural to me, which was playing with dolls and putting on dresses and, avoiding sports and that kind of stuff, I was redirected. No, Mike, play with this, play with the bat and ball, don't play with the Barbie or whatever. And there was a struggle. And then eventually I got punished if I got caught dressing up in my mother's clothes or my sister's clothes. And I saw that they were getting like the beautiful dresses and I had to wear brown shoes or black shoes. I hated it, and I felt like I was not living according to myself of what I was naturally. And to me, I wanted to be a girl. I wanted my hair long. I wanted to wear the dresses. So it was a constant reminder. And they basically talk about how transgender children or children with gender dysphoria struggle with a functional type of depression because again, they have this conflict. And the conflict was the very first thing that I realized as a 4-year old. I still remember that. It's palpable even today at 60 years old.
Mm.
So as I was growing up, I didn't realize that I had defensively detached from my father. And that's a scientific term, and it happens between the ages of 1 and 3, and it's a rejection of the same gender parent. So either that same gender parent isn't available, or
Yeah.
maybe they're abusive, or there's many reasons, but no child is really conscious until about 3 or 4 years old. So between 1 and 3, little boys start to realize that they're not like their mothers or like their dads. So there's this transition that has to take place. And then imitating masculine behavior is gender affirmation. So when I was looking for my same gender parent, my dad was a musician in the Navy, so he would be gone 3 to 6 months at a time. So at a time when I needed that example, he wasn't there. But then when he was home, he was this hot-headed Italian. He was abusive. He was loud. And in my little subconscious mind, I put this together that I looked at him and said, if that's my gender, no thanks. I don't want that. And I totally rejected that. So the only example left for me, John, was my mother. She was safe. She was quiet. She was available and she was nurturing. And so I thought, well, I don't want to be like him. I want to be like her. And that's where I believe that all of a sudden at 4 years old, I'd already been imitating her and wanting to be like her. So my gender identity was really more feminine than it was masculine. And that followed me until I was 20 years old. Here's what happened. You know what reinforced that, John, was when my father would force me to go out with him shooting guns, trying to butch up his son, or he'd take me out. He was a policeman, and then he would take me out to attack trained German shepherds. And, everything about masculinity was aggressive and it was hostile. And it was a total turn off. So I just wanted to be coloring in my coloring book and playing with Barbies and paper dolls, at home.
Yeah.
So So I didn't relate to him. And every exposure to masculinity was only more frightening and rejecting. So it was reinforced. But so then when I go to school and the boys pick up on my effeminate mannerisms, I was a little kid. My mother put me in first grade at 5 years old. And that's, and I'm 5'4" now, so in first grade, I was a runt and emotionally immature, and I'm 5 years old in first grade. And so everything was really overwhelming and I felt inadequate. And then the boys started calling me sissy, queer little girl, which pushed the one thing that I needed more even further away. And that was masculine affirmation and belonging. And I believe that eventually that led to same-sex attraction because the hole that was in my heart was this emptiness of masculine love, not sexual, but masculine love and affirming, which began at the rejection of my father. And then eventually it led to the boys in school. And then by the time I was 15, the gender dysphoria was so strong. My hair was down to my shoulders. And if somebody mistook me for one of my sisters, I was flattered by that. I would fantasize and go out in the backyard in my bathrobe. And as the wind would blow my hair and my dress, I would fantasize about maybe one day I could be a real girl.
Yeah.
And you know what? They have laws to protect people like me. And now if a child at 7 or 8 years old comes forward and says that they're a girl in a boy's body, the government will step in against the will of the parents and give the child the hormones that they desire so that they can have the sex change. Like
now,
around 15
that's
or
not
16
here in
years
America,
old.
correct? Is it somewhere else?
Yeah, it is.
It's in America.
In America. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So if that was the law when I was a kid, John, I would have been standing first in line. I would have. I would have fought you. I would have fought you for that. But anyway, so then what happened for me is I even thought that as a Christian that was the only solution. At 13, when I had same-sex attraction, I eventually just gave into it. I quit fighting it, and it was what came naturally to me. And so I prayed that God would change me, and that never happened. And so even more, the thought that if I transition to be a female, then my attractions to men would be acceptable, and then maybe God would love me. Do you see how twisted that all got?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that
It
followed
makes
me
sense.
until
Makes sense.
okay.
Yeah.
So
But
at 20 years
let
old,
me ask you a question. So you were praying to
yeah,
God. Did you have a family that was religious, or did they believe in God? What were you
yeah,
taught?
yeah. My
Yeah.
family was fairly religious. We were good Catholics. I remember my mother took us to church every week, and when my dad was home, he would go. My dad had an affair with a waitress in one of our restaurants,
Wow.
and he left my family for her. And then he got baptized, another Christian faith, and so he was an elder in the church or whatever. So eventually, I became baptized in that church. Still thinking that I knew that God existed, but I thought that God was like my dad, and I thought that he was arbitrary and cruel, kind of dismissive and unavailable, and so I really thought that God was like my father. Somebody said it so accurately, and I want to use his words. He said it took me 50 years to wipe the image of my father's face off the image of God.
Yeah.
Yep, that was it exactly. So I really credited God with the same attributes that my father had. And so I didn't serve God because I loved him. I served him because I feared him. But I knew he existed. I was never atheist. I was never agnostic. I knew that God was out there. I basically just thought that he didn't care about me, and that, yeah, that he wasn't available. Nor did I think that he was powerful, because for all those years that I prayed, he never answered that prayer.
Yeah. Thank you for your honesty.
Oh, so what's that?
Thank you for your honesty. That's a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can have you'll get that, because I have no other truth. But at 20 years old, when I walked away from Christianity and I said, I'm done. I can't get my sexuality and my religion to come together. So I went into the gay world, and all of a sudden my eyes became open that masculinity is much more valuable than femininity. And
Yeah.
so if I wanted to be held by a man or to be loved by a man, I had to butch it up a little bit. So being a short little guy in the gay culture who's losing my hair, you had to
Yeah.
package yourself in such a way that really garnered some attention,
Right.
or you
Right.
have to be really cute or funny or whatever. So
Yeah.
I realized that if I butched it up a little bit, that I found that I got much more attention from men than the other way.
Okay.
And then as I fell into sexual addiction, then I became very comfortable with my male parts. And my male parts were what was getting the attention. And so I never struggled with the transgenderism anymore. That was gone. The dysphoria was gone. And I fully embraced being male. But now I was sexually addicted in the gay culture. So here, John, is the big dilemma. If I would have had that sex change at 16, and then all of a sudden realized at 20 that masculinity was more valuable to get male attention, can you imagine how screwed up my life would have been?
Yeah.
Because I would have mutilated my body to where there was no turning back or going back.
Yeah. There's different stories, and I'm so grateful that you're able to share all that, because there's going to be parts of this community here on Audit that don't fully align with your beliefs as a Christian, and that's okay. We welcome
Yeah.
those who are curious, who want to hear stories like Michael's. And part of that story is you developed your sexuality, your gender identity over time, and you admit, even now at 60 years old, you admit that you had gender dysphoria, very, very strong forms of gender dysphoria, all the way until 20 years old. And then you say that there were environmental factors that shaped your gender identity in a way, right? Funny enough, ironically enough, it's the LGBT community that shaped it, because it's true. If you look at the literature, I was reading a piece by Huffington Post by Michael Hobbs, and he was talking about hypermasculinity, right, within the gay culture, because gay men want hypermasculine men to be with. And it's staggering, because the more masculine you are in the gay community, there's higher amounts of depression, actually, and anxiety associated with it, as he writes. And he's a gay writer. So this isn't something that's coming out of a conservative circle. It's really confounding when you look at some of these dissonance, or these ideas with so much dissonance, because you're trying to be one thing in the gay community, but then you feel loneliness, right? Michael Hobbs talks about that loneliness, that drug dependency, what was your experience overall within the gay community? Can you add? Was it positive? Like, what parts were positive? What parts were negative that drew you out of that? What did you feel during your time with your lovers?
Oh, okay. I was a poser from really early on, and I was, the way that I found to really fit in was to imitate or emulate anything that I thought that you wanted me to be. And I went to 10 schools within 12 years of my early education. I went to three third grades. So every school that we would change into, I never knew if they were going to love me or hate me. And it was usually one or the other. And so with every school that I went to, I remember kind of thinking, how can I blend in, or even how can I disappear, or how can I avoid being beat up by being funny or something like that. So every different school was a different opportunity and a different persona. Let me tell you, like the height of the gender dysphoria was 15. No, 14. And I was going to a school in Dearborn, Michigan. And Dearborn, Michigan, back in the 70s, had tons of money. Excuse me. It's where the Ford automaker was, and the school systems all had swimming pools, Olympic swimming pools, the high schools and the junior high schools.
Wow.
So here I am in eighth grade. Remember, I'm a year younger than everybody else, and I'm short and I'm little, and I haven't quite hit puberty.
Yeah.
And so we get the swimming pool for a week, in the wintertime every other week. And the girls would get it one week, and then the guys would get it the following week. So I bring my red bathing suit and I put it on because it's the week that we're going to go swimming. And I put it on, and I'm the only one wearing a bathing suit in the shower. And then I get teased and I get picked on until I take off my bathing suit and I have no pubic hair. And there's some guys that have full beards. And so, of course, now I feel even more inadequate.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I'm teased and harassed because, I didn't grow up in that school system. And so I don't know how to swim. So while we're doing laps, I have to hang onto the side of the pool and do these laps. Wait a minute, John, let me tell you how degrading it was, emasculating it was.
Yeah.
There were 34 of us guys, and we all had to stand on the side of the pool and do jumping jacks naked. And then we
Okay.
had to pair up with the guy next to us, and we had to hold each other's ankles and do sit-ups every day that we were in that pool. So
Yeah.
the more I compared myself, the more inadequate I felt, which only drove the gender dysphoria even higher, thinking this is not cutting it. I do not measure up. And so the only option for me is that if I'm a female, that might be the only relief to a very miserable existence.
Yeah.
And so you're right. The world was shaping my gender dysphoria. But then in the gay culture, so let me segue to that because I really like that you brought this out. In the gay culture, again, it was like trying to fit in. And I think that many LGBT people are just doing the same thing. We're just trying to fit in.
Totally.
And for me, in this culture, I realized very early on that in the gay culture, especially in the club scene, you're valued by, if you're masculine, it's like you're a millionaire. If you're young, you're you're a millionaire, and so there's all these hierarchies, within the gay culture. If you're by gender or that kind of thing, then, there's like these different caste system. If you're browner or darker skin, then you're in this other culture, and who you date and the type of people that you're into will put you in a category as well. And so, trying to avoid those categories is very difficult, but you can't escape it. And you get labeled very quickly in the gay culture. You're either a top or a bottom, or, you're into this or you're into that or whatever. And people are always looking to put you in that category and to stick you there. And once you're there, it's very difficult to get out. So I think that what I learned very early on in public school kind of prepared me a little bit for the gay culture, because I tried to be like the funny guy, the guy that had liked to have a lot of fun. And I was an aerobics instructor and a hairdresser. And, John, you can't get any more gay than that. So, I surrounded myself by pretty people and fun people. And so Mike was the obnoxious good time guy. And that's really, I think, where I found my niche, to where I wasn't under criticism a lot. But it really was it was a cruel world because you had to make money, you had to drive the right car, you had to wear the right clothes, and you certainly couldn't be bald or old. By the time you are 40 years old, you're a has been. And if you go to many gay bars, you rarely find somebody over 40 in a gay bar. It's
Yeah.
very, very difficult. And I
Now,
spent
that
20
said,
years in that culture.
now you say that not many older gay men would be in those bars. I've heard that even a professor that I work with, Michael Bailey, he has written a book, The Man Who Would Be Queen. He talks about gender dysphoria. He talks about gay men and the associations with
Wait, what's the name of that again? The
The
Man
Man
Who Would
Who
Be
Would Be
Queen?
Queen. Yeah, it's a play off of The Man Who Would Be King. It's pretty clever.
That's
Really
perfect.
powerful. But these gay men usually are, as you say, there's a caste system of those who are most desirable, who have the most sexual capital. Like Michael Hobbs, he talks about that too. You have to be young, you have to be
Mhm.
this really hyper masculine guy, and there's so much insecurity actually that's bred within that subculture of the gay community, the gay men, right? Especially. Now, is it because you are older and these older men are settled down? Is that what's happening? Like, where are all these older men going to if they're not having these, hookups or going to the bar? Not saying that you have to hook up when you go to the bar, but I know that is part of the culture.
Well, I left the culture when I was 40, and already I was a has-been. And even in the internet, in chat rooms or whatever, people wanted to know how old you were. And so, many times I would lie and say that I was 36 or 34, and I would post, of course, the most youthful pictures of myself, and
Wow.
and it's all an illusion. But if you dare say that you were 40, nobody wanted to be with you, and 40 is not old, by any standard. But the average age, the average life expectancy of a homosexual is 55. That's it. So by the time people are 55, the life expectancy is very short. And I think that it's also because drug and alcohol use and addiction is very high among the gay population. Of course, I was in the culture in the 80s when AIDS was discovered. I came out the same year that AIDS came out. Could I have any worse luck? And I had friends. I had beautiful friends. I had this one friend named Brian, and he was a model, and he was absolute perfection physically.
Yeah.
And he was tall, he was lean, he had a beautiful smile, beautiful head of hair. He dressed right. He went to an Ivy League school. He had everything. And unfortunately, because he was so beautiful, he got AIDS really early. And I saw him 1 month, and then the next month he was dead. And my friends were dropping like that. And in
Dropping
the
like
AIDS
flies.
culture,
Yeah.
we lost, I think, like 150,000 people within the first couple of years of AIDS discovery, because there were no pills or
Research out
anything
there.
they didn't even know how to diagnose it, so,
Yeah.
or let alone treat it. So at that time, it was a rampant disease. It was
Yeah.
huge. It was just wiping out communities.
Sure. That
Mhm.
hasn't changed too much now. It's gotten a lot better with medicine, but also preventative care, like educating those within the gay community and those who have sex with people of the same sex. Now it's bisexual women, bisexual men, and men who have sex with men that typically have the highest amount of sexually transmitted diseases. And again, like bisexual women would actually help transmit the rate of sexual transmitted diseases in lesbian women too at a higher rate because a lot of partners, right? And then going back and forth. And I know that this is a very uncomfortable subject because it's so sensitive, right? AIDS, it's been a very ugly history within the gay community and within global societies, right? In like South Africa, here in America. But we need to talk about it too. How do we prevent, that from happening? And there's been so many educational programs, activism for condoms, preventative care, right? How to have safe sex. But men who have sex with men still aren't buying into it. They're still having unsafe sex. So, how do you envisage a future where men who are gay, who may or may not aspire to be Christian, but who who still struggle with this idea of monogamy? Because monogamy is one of the best proven ways of avoiding STDs because you know your partner, you know their sexual history, and if you're not being out having multiple, in multiple relationships, then you're going to avoid the risk of STDs and heartbreak. right? How do you see that play out? I know you've left the gay community, but is there any way to overcome that within the gay community? Do you see very, very successful relationships with gay men being together monogamously and even lesbian women for that matter?
Yeah. Well, I have some statistics that were shocking, and I suspected that, being in the gay culture for 20 years. And I think that that's why we use culture versus lifestyle, because,
Right.
when you use the term lifestyle, it's talking about like the party people that hang out in the clubs. And I guess I'd have to say that that was me, but I didn't know anywhere else to meet gay people. We didn't have the internet, and we didn't have these opportunities to meet healthy individuals that weren't just hanging out in bars. And in the 5 significant relationships that I had, I was so sexually addicted. I was never faithful in any of those relationships. I represented myself as if I was honorable, but I had this duplicative, what's the word?
Duplicitous.
Thank you. I had that kind of life, and where I represented myself as, fun Mike and on the outside or whatever, but deviant on the inside, because I was having sexual relations with as many as 3 different men in a day, and I would do that as often as 4 times a week for 20 years. That's a long time.
Wow.
And you know what? Every time I started a significant relationship, I always did an AIDS test and figured that it would come back positive. And each time it came back negative. And I just had one. I just had one. Oh, back in September, and
Yeah.
praise God, I've never been infected with HIV. That's the hand of God. That's
Right.
the hand of God without
Right.
a doubt. But
Okay.
but in that culture, the statistic that I have is that like 17% of the homosexuals that they interviewed had as many as 1,000 or more life partners. I think it was like 43% had as many as 500 partners,
Sexual
and
partners.
it was
Yeah.
sexual partners over a lifetime.
Over a
And
lifetime.
then I think the smallest group was 200. So those are really high numbers. And that means that disease is higher, alcoholism and drug abuse is higher. Even among lesbians, they found that lesbian women were more likely to have more lifetime partners than heterosexual women.
Right.
And that they were more fluid, passing from heterosexual relationships to homosexual relationships and back again.
Mm-hmm.
So there's actually statistics on that. So regardless of what I saw in that culture, there's statistics to back up the fact that there's a lot of promiscuity among homosexuality than there is among heterosexual society. And John, to let you know also that the number one group that are infected with HIV today are people that are 25 years old and younger. And the average of 2 adolescents are infected with HIV every hour of every day.
Gosh, that's insane. I had no clue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, it disproportionately affects the gay community, those within the gay community. So that's a major problem. And I think I understand why activists, speakers, leaders in the gay community might not want to talk about this, because there might be a lot of shame involved in that and guilt. It's like, this is something that may gross people out or make us look like heathens in some sense. What would you say, as someone who has come out, not only come out as gay, but someone who has come out of the gay community, what would you say was that turning point? When you really realize, wait, this isn't for me. Not saying that I don't love these people or care about these individuals, because I do, because I know you do. How did you do that? It seems like almost like a betrayal in a sense, like that was your identity. That was your whole being, wasn't it? How did you do it?
Yeah. One day at a time, John. And there were many times when I said, "Oh, I'm done. I'm going back. I've had it. I can't do this." And I'm amazed at God's faithfulness. He was more faithful to me, John, than I was to him. And I was for a few years at first, I was always trying to prove that I could be gay and still be a Christian. I was always trying to prove that. And it was really funny because I found this group and I said, "Oh, look, I can have my boyfriend and Jesus." And my friend who was also coming out of the gay life, and we were sitting there together, and I found this website, and he said, "But but look at how they, look at how they explain the scriptures. That doesn't make sense. And I go, I don't care. And I go, tell me lies. Just lie to me. Tell me that I can have Jesus and still have my boyfriend. And my friend was patient with me and prayed with me. And eventually I had to admit that those scripture verses did not make sense in the way that they explain them. And I had to accept the fact that biblically it does not approve of it. And that was a startling and harsh reality that I struggled against, that I lived in denial, and my flesh would fight with my spirit. And eventually I got to the point where I had decided that, I was willing to do this now. And I think that was because 7, 8 years went by, John. 7, 8 years it took before I was more solid about the fact that, yes, this is the direction that I'm going. And you know something, there are times in my life when there are challenges, and thank you for mentioning the fact that I do love, my LGBT brothers and sisters. And, we're all in this together, and I identify with what they're going through. I'm not in opposition of them. I just want them to know that there's another option out there. And, we don't make gay people straight. Trust me. I couldn't even make myself straight, but this is about connecting people to Jesus Christ. And I still have same-sex attraction, but amazingly, 12 years ago, I started having attractions to the opposite sex too. So regardless of what my struggle may be or what my attractions may be, I've decided that my identity is no longer in my attractions. My identity is in Christ. That's it. And when I finally made that decision, then things started to really change. And for somebody that couldn't go a week without a sexual conquest, it's been like 14, 15 years since I've actually had physical contact with a man. And I'm shocked that a God that I can't see or touch is more valuable than that. And I still can't tell you how. But there are times when I think to myself, you know what, maybe the ministry, maybe going around is too much. And, I really miss my friends. I really miss the accolades that I got from the world, being this hotshot hairdresser. Or so I thought. And I think, what if I just got a boyfriend and I just moved off into oblivion? And you know what? God will respect that. God will always respect my right to choose. And, that's the amazing thing about him. But when I think about what my life would be like without Jesus, and even if I could have the happiness and all the other things that I had before in the gay life, the thought of living without Jesus Christ, I cannot make that break. Like for me, it was like, no, how is it that I want Jesus more than I want that boyfriend again? And for all the wonderful things that Jesus has done for me and shown me in the last 20 years, like I could still have that if I wanted it, the gay life. But amazingly, even being celibate, this is much more valuable and meaningful to me. And for somebody that's not married or dating, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. That's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Now, that's not the narrative that most people hear, though, like in our culture. Because, yeah, maybe this was like 1,000 years ago, and you want to become a monk and live in the hills of, Roman Catholic temples, whatever it may be. You have a type of mindset, a worldview that instructs your belief and joy, honestly. Like, you have a very meaningful life. I see your pictures all over Facebook. You are celibate. You don't have a lifelong partner with you, but you're traveling, you're speaking, you have community, you have family, all these different churches and organizations that you work and, live alongside. Now, I am very curious because I think a lot of people do have that conception that, well, if you don't allow gay individuals to marry, that was the argument in Oberfell in 2015, then they'll be lonely, they'll be depressed, they'll be treated as a second-class citizen. And I think we all can kind of emotionally be pulled toward that direction. It's like, we don't want our friends who are gay to feel any less, so we should give those rights. And we're not trying to get into the marriage debate here. I think what is very pertinent to discuss is how have you been able to reach out to your gay friends? How have you reached out to those who are trans and allow them to feel like they are a human being? And even if you believe that maybe they're not as whole unless if they come to Christ, understand who God is and how God can fulfill them like he has fulfilled you, how do you believe your story and you sharing your story in various places across the globe has given them that impact, that help?
So, John, many things are like coming into my mind, but two stories in particular that stick
Great.
out. I was just speaking in Zurich like 2 weeks ago, and there was a Buddhist couple that was in the audience, and they were listening to my presentation. And I remember thinking to myself, "Let me speak as if I'm speaking to them in behalf of Jesus." And so, everything that I wanted to share, I wanted to temper it with love and compassion, because the truth of God is love and compassionate. Even in the Christian community now, that is being thrown out, that the power of God to transform a life is considered hate speech. And that's not from God. You know, that everything that he did, that when Jesus died, my sins were forgiven. You know, the shedding of blood, you know, gave me the freedom from my sins. But when Jesus rose from the dead, he came into new life, and he offers me new life too. That's not behavior modification. That is a transformation. Isn't that funny? It starts with trans. But anyway, so this girl comes up to me at the end of the program that I shared, and she said, "You mean you prayed that God would take away your boyfriend?" And that's not, she kind of took me out of context or whatever. And she said, "Well, if I ever prayed to Jesus, I would pray that he would let me keep my girlfriend." And I said, "Honey, you pray whatever you want. You just keep praying." And John, that is how I tried to be relational. It's like, yeah, ask him. You want it? Ask him. Ask him for whatever you want, because I sure did. And I demanded it. And I stuck I stuck my finger in God's face, and I said, "This is who I am, and this is what I want." But I think he cares more about the fact that you just stay in communication with him, no matter what it is, no matter what's going on in your mind. And you know what? He can deal with that, and he can work with that. And you know what? He worked with me, as miserable as I was, and he didn't drag me in kicking and screaming. It had to be my choice, but he reasoned with me. And what is it? Isaiah chapter 1 and verse 18, it says, "Come and let us reason together." He's not going to force you. This isn't forcing people. It's not like reparative therapy or conversion therapy. And let me make it very clear, Coming Out Ministries does not endorse it, nor do we promote it, because that's talking about a behavior modification, and we're not about that.
Right.
And none of us in Coming Out Ministries ever experienced that or pursued that. We're talking about a divine intervention from God himself. And it's not my job to make gay people straight. It's God's job to reconcile us to him. And you know, some people experience same-sex attraction until they die. But you know what? God still loves them. And they're still, in my opinion, I still believe that that's the direction that we're to go. And even if I never marry, and even if I never have sex again, that God promises to fill that vacuum, that emptiness. And you know what? He's the only one that's ever done that to any satisfaction of mine. Even in a great relationship, I still wasn't faithful because those men weren't able to give me what I really needed. So the other story that I wanted to tell you is I was going to Austria several years ago, and somebody told me that there was a transgender male to female. And I went to the church, and it was pretty obvious who that person was. They were over 6 feet tall, and they had very masculine features. And unfortunately, you know, this person had all the bumps, but they still looked like a man. And my heart just broke for that person. And I thought I had it all wrapped up. I thought for somebody that came from that identity, you know, I would know exactly what to say. But when I was confronted with him, with this person, and I sat with them, they just started crying out and pouring out their heart about how their wife had left them, their children don't talk to them, the church doesn't know how to treat them. They had like horrible scarring, and that they're in constant pain, and they just don't feel like God can even love them.
Do they have
And
plastic surgery? Is that why they're scarring?
Yeah, absolutely. They had scarring and pain every single day of their life as a result of the mutilating surgeries.
Yeah.
And this person said to me how they even struggled with whether they wanted to live anymore or not. And John, I was confronted with the fact that I didn't have a clue what to say. But the only thing that I could do is I sat with that person, and you know, I listened. And I just let them pour out their heart to me. And I represented myself as someone who cared for their better good. And that was the best that I could do. And I believe that that was what God was telling me to do all along. There was no speech that I could prepare that was going to be beneficial. what that person needed was unconditional love and compassion. And you
Mm.
know what? That was I think what God was asking me to give, and that was all that I had available to me. So I think that in church culture, thank you, because the Lord just gave me another story. So there was this really humble couple in my church, and they were Colombian, and they were immigrants from Colombia,
Yeah.
and they had a little daughter that was 10 years old. Have I told you the story?
Nope.
It's
Nope. This is
fasten
all
your
new to me.
seatbelt, John.
It's all new to me.
This is so good. This is really good. So this little family, they barely spoke English, and they lived in a rundown townhouse in Orlando, Florida. And the husband was a painter, and his wife homeschooled their daughter at home. They had very humble beginnings, and their daughter was about 10 years old. So one of my friends that came out of the gay culture, that was walking this Christian path with me, his name was Ruben, and Ruben was tall and skinny and Puerto Rican. So he was friends with his Colombian family, and they were studying the Bible on Sunday night. So my friend calls me and he goes, "Listen, Mike, you need to come, to the Bible study." And we had a third friend also that was this big black guy with big muscles, and his name was Wayne. So the three of us would hang out like the three amigos. And anytime we entered into a church, of course, people could just look and just figure us out. But my friend Ruben said, "You should come to these Bible studies on Sunday night." And I said, "Sunday night? I don't think so." And he said, "Well, they feed us." And I said, "Okay, I'm there." And so every Sunday night, the three of us were in my friend's home, and we studied the Word of God, and then they would feed us. They didn't even have money, and I was almost embarrassed by the fact that they gave us so much food when here I'm driving a Mercedes, and they live in this humble little house in this low-income housing place that was almost a tenement. But every Sunday we were there, and we would play games together after we would study. We'd have meaningful discussions. If it was somebody's birthday, they'd bake a cake. We hung out with this little girl. Well, one day after a few months, the wife said to her husband, she said, "Do you think they're gay?" And the husband said, "I don't know." And she said, "Well, should we be concerned about our daughter, being exposed to these guys?" And he said this, he said, "It shouldn't matter." He said, "The blood of Jesus was shed for them just like it was for us." And she said, "I'm so glad that you said that, because I've really learned to love those guys." And you know what? That began a friendship. And they didn't know how to deal with people like us.
Yeah.
And we were, two totally different cultures. And here they were from South America. And
Right.
I was this snobby hairdresser from Orlando. But we maintained that friendship through Jesus Christ. And when I moved to Tennessee, they moved with me. They lived with me until they found their house. And then after 15 years, this girl grew up. This 10-year-old girl grew up. And she went to college to be a nurse, and this boy fell in love with her. And she said to him, she said, "If you want to marry me, you have to ask my father and Mike Carducci." And that is one of those relationships that I believe that God wants all of us to experience, is that even if we're from different cultures, even if we don't understand someone, that if we show and demonstrate just Christ-like love to people, that God can automatically bring things together. And you know what? They are such an integral part of my family even today. This girl grew up, now she has 2 kids, and they call me uncle. That's just one example, John, of the incredible healing that God can bring to us inside the church if we just open up our hearts to all people. It's not an LGBT thing. It's just loving people where they are. And I think that that's one of the most powerful and simple stories that I can give you.
That's beautiful. That's really hard.
Yeah, it's incredible. Oh, and one last thing about that. God has given me a core group of people, and mostly they're my 3 sisters, but also there's other people that are in my church community, or people that I've met where I've really established close and safe relationships with, and they are my core. And you know what? As long as I have them and they're available to me, I don't need a significant relationship. I'm not looking for one, and I feel totally satisfied because I have my support group that are there for me. They hold me accountable, they lift me up, they pray for me, and they laugh with me. And John, I think that every person needs that.
Yeah. Everybody does need that. Everybody does need that. There's this term within the LGBT community, chosen family, and we all need a chosen family outside of our biological family. Sometimes our biological families are crap, like, to put it in crass terms. Like, you just don't have the relationships, and sometimes they're very traumatic.
Right.
and there's
Yeah.
still deficits. But with our chosen family, it's a safe space and a haven sometimes for individuals who have been persecuted, maybe by the religious community, maybe their family is religious and don't accept gay individuals, but also for
Yeah.
you when you were opening yourself up to that family that was poor, and you were still in that. Were you still in that phase where you were early on in your Christian development, or were you already someone
When I met
who was
this
established?
family,
Yeah,
mhm, yeah,
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 okay,
I was still in that early phase.
early phase. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
that's just another message that I continue to hear from you is there's other options. There's other ways that you can live out your life in a meaningful, joyful, impactful way. And that's just not something that we get. I didn't get, growing up. It's like I questioned my sexuality. I came out to some of my friends in high school and I came out to broader communities, at church and my family while at college. But I didn't really know until I heard stories like yours what I could do with the sexual attraction to other people of the same sex. What could I do, in terms of marriage and this concept of Christianity and what God calls me to? So you're helping a lot of us, even if, people who are more liberal, progressive, still in the LGBT community don't fully agree with you about your faith, how you've handled your orientation and your gender dysphoria. Have you looked at it and created this narrative that has pieced it together alongside of your Christianity? I think it's so important to see that not everybody within the LGBT community is the same. And I've heard of stories like yours, people who have gone to the LGBT community, who are still in the LGBT community, who are Christian, who are maybe not Christian, but struggle on this topic of reconciling their faith in God, wherever He is, and Jesus more specifically. And for yourself to be able to voice your own story here, it's so helpful. It's so helpful to alleviate some of those questions and maybe help us even imagine a more fuller and all encompassing life where those different axioms of faith and sexuality don't have to be colliding all the time, right?
So, John, what you say really helps me to sum up kind of this statement. Keep pursuing truth. And if you make that, if that is your capstone to your whole experience, it's like, Lord, just show me the truth, because the truth will set you free, and that's what the Bible says. And like I told that girl, just pray, ask for whatever you want. You want to keep your girlfriend, ask him. And if God's got a different truth, He's not going to give me something different than He's going to give somebody else. But He recognizes where we are, and He never goes against our will. But I guarantee you, if you're seeking truth, He promises to lead us into all truth, and the truth will set us free. So no matter where you are in that walk of your life or whatever, and that's what I was so grateful for. I was so grateful that there were people that were willing to walk it out with me, even if I didn't have it figured out. And honestly, John, after 20 years, I'm not sure that I've got it all figured out yet either. But I definitely know that this direction is fulfilling me a lot more than anything else ever did. And it's not easy,
Mm.
but it's the most peaceful I've ever been in my whole entire life. And 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 for that, I'm willing to do it again tomorrow.
Wow, that's really, really incredible. The very last couple minutes here, I wanted you to be able to share with the audience what it is, aside from what you just spoken about. What do you hope to do with the time that you have here? You're 60 and you still have years alongside of you here. I mean,
It could
like,
be over tomorrow.
when he doesn't have a beard, he looks very, very young. So what are you
Yeah,
hoping to
thanks.
accomplish? What are you hoping to go and do in the world? What is your calling?
Wow. So John, this is funny. I'm not as well organized and put together as my colleagues are. They're much better at that, and they're much more organized. Um, I love that God is also I can't think of the word right now, that He doesn't give me a set agenda, and that He's pretty fly. Like all of a sudden, in the last 6 months, I've been shocked that I've been in 8 countries 12 times. And oh, you want me to go there? I'll go there. Oh, you want me to come back that way? Okay, I'll go there. And I love that about God. And there's so many days when I wake up and I say, thank you, Lord, for being so flexible, and thank you that you don't have everything all organized out. So I don't know John, that I have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan,
right,
and
right.
it's pretty much fun seeing, where God takes me. But we are working on a resource, and I believe that with all of the education out there about identity and sexuality, I think to myself, well, why not represent the sexuality and identity that God puts in the Bible? And to offer that to young children and young kids before they even enter school. So it's filled with the rainbow, it's filled with Noah's Ark, and it's filled with Genesis chapter 1 and the creation story. And so I think it's amazing. And I'm working with 2 people. One person has a master's degree in gender studies. The other person is the director of an education department at a seminary. So and then I'm a hairdresser. So we're working together to put together a resource that does sex education for Christian children.
I see.
Because by the time our children get to be 10 and 12, they are so educated by YouTube and everything else that's in this world that, it's very difficult to give them foundational understanding without educating them about sex. And so we want to provide a program where children can actually learn about identity and sexuality from a biblical standpoint. So that's maybe the only goal I have. Oh, wow, maybe I am more goal oriented than I gave myself credit for. We're also wanting to open up a branch of our ministry that basically deals with pornography and sex addiction. And I've met some people that are in Australia and also in Switzerland and South America or South Africa that we're teaming up and working together to provide that as another branch of our ministry. So, wow.
Those are incredible undertakings. I mean, very
Yeah.
contentious, topics to talk about. Sex is never easy to discuss, let alone in church. But you're able to do that from a very unique perspective and life experience. This has been such a fascinating time because I've learned about so much from you. Apart from our first conversation, I'm so privileged to have Michael here with us discussing his life as someone who has left the gay community, become a Christian, and faithfully serves those in the LGBT community, reconciling people to Christ. And how can we reach you, Michael?
Oh, thank you for asking. If you go to comingoutministries.org, we have a website set up. We have resources available. We also have a movie. We have a documentary that we did called Journey Interrupted, and it's been translated into 12 languages. So you can see it in an array of different subtitles, Italian, really Czech, Russian, South Africa, or Afrikaans, and even Thai. So we've got a bunch of languages out there that you can download for free and share with people. And it's only 1 hour long because in a world of YouTube, people don't want to watch, videos that are really long, but it's just 1 hour and it tells the story of 5 individuals. We also have a prayer line that we do 3 times a week. We also have Zoom meetings for formers, for people that are wanting out of LGBT understanding. That's a powerful group. So we also have a prayer request where you can leave prayer requests for people that you love and care for. So we really want to try to really offer people the tools that we were looking for, John, when we were wanting a different direction.
Yeah. Incredible. Well, thank you so much for all those resources. I think there are definitely people in this audience, in this community that will want to reach out to you and hear more from you and the different types of testimonies that your friends share. So thank you again, Michael, for joining us. I hope that you'll check out some of those links that I'll provide about Michael and some of the discussion points that I've brought up alongside of what he has brought up today. It's been a privilege, Michael. I hope that we do this again. So
yeah, anytime, John. Let me know.
Please let me know. Yeah, this has been John Chen Out to the World, and I'm so happy to be able to have you join us today. Have a great one.